I'm joining you from the Fraser Valley office of the Manufacturing Safety Alliance of BC, located right here in Chilliwack, on the traditional and unceded territories of the Stolo Coast Salish people. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you from these shared lands this morning. A little bit about the Alliance, for those who don't know us. The Manufacturing Safety Alliance is a not-for-profit health and safety association for manufacturers and food processors in British Columbia. Our team of health and safety experts are here to answer your questions and to help you towards core certification, the Occupational Safety Standard of Excellence for manufacturing. We're here to support the continuous improvement of your health and safety programs to prevent injuries and promote workplace wellness. Please call us anytime for health and safety training, information, tools, or advice. Today's expert panel will explore the skills gap facing our manufacturing sector here in BC and virtually every industry across Canada. I'm excited to hear their perspective on the new skill requirements they foresee for a new generation of workers, how technology and artificial intelligence are changing the work environment and the skills requirements for our teams, how the risk profile is changing in our businesses as a result, and what that means for workplace health and safety, and for the skills our health and safety professionals will need as we look to the future. In this virtual town hall, our government and industry panelists will discuss how we can adapt and innovate successfully, what programs are available to support you in addressing the gaps in skills and qualifications, and we look forward to your input and questions for the panel as we work together to understand the path ahead. Please use the Q&A icon at the bottom of the screen to ask questions at any time during the session, and we'll get to your questions at the end. So to begin, joining us on our panel today, it's my pleasure to welcome Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters Chief Economist, Arcand, BCIT Occupational Health and Safety Program Head, Sidhu, and BC Tree Fruits Vice President of Supply Chain, Ogilvie. Thank you all for joining us. And as we get started, we'll invite each of the panelists to take a minute or two to start the conversation and share their perspectives to the topics of future skills needs, challenges, and opportunities. So to begin, I would like to invite Alan to talk about and share briefly about your role and what perspectives you bring to the topic of future skills needed, challenges, and of course, opportunities.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, and welcome everyone. Thanks for having me on. Excited to take part in the conversation today. So I am Chief Economist, as Lisa said, at Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters. We are the main advocacy group for the manufacturing sector in Canada. We represent the views of about 52,000 manufacturing establishments in Canada, including the 7,500 located right in BC. So our main mission is to help manufacturers grow, drive innovation in industry, and make sure that the sector is competitive both domestically and globally. So from that perspective of wanting the manufacturing sector to grow, the perspective that we come from when it comes to labor and skill shortages is that it represents a significant roadblock to growth in the industry. Whenever I have conversations with manufacturers, and so anecdotally, or if we ever run any member surveys, it always surfaces that labor and skill shortages tend to be among the sector's most pressing challenges. Of course, this was a major problem just a couple of years ago during the pandemic when Canada and the sector faced record high job openings. In BC, they reached up to almost 10,000 job openings in the manufacturing sector in that year. Those issues have since abated, and now the number of unfilled positions is back to normal. However, if you look at any of the numbers, the wages still remain wage growth remains still well above average. The unemployment rate in the BC manufacturing sector is very low. It's only about 3%. So signifying that there are still challenges. Additionally, looking ahead, the aging of the workforce will present a big challenge for the industry. Last year, 27%, or about 46,000 manufacturing workers were aged 55 years and over. That's a high number. Though you're looking at a big retirement wave coming up over the next 10 years. So this indicates that manufacturers are going to continue to struggle finding workers. So that is, obviously going to remain a big part of my job and CME's work going forward.
Thanks, Alan. Do you see, the thinking around the future skills needed? Do you see a shift in that from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I can get it more into later, but for sure there is a transformation taking place in manufacturing where we do need workers with greater skills. In fact, I did a number crunching this morning looking at the employment data in BC and did a cross tabulation of employment by educational attainment. And you can see that 10 years ago, about 55% of the workforce in BC, the manufacturing workforce, had some kind of post-secondary certificate, and today it's up to 2/3. So a really high number, like 2/3 of all workers in manufacturing today have some sort of post-secondary certificate, like a trade or a college degree or a university degree. So it kind of speaks to this outdated view of the sector that it's just a bunch of people bashing metal. No, it's definitely an industry that's coming more and more, requiring more and more workers with high-end skills.
Wonderful. Yes, and we'll definitely cover this certainly into the topics into the future. But let's invite Bobby to talk a little bit about your role at BCIT and what perspective you bring to the topic of future skills that are needed, challenges, of course, but also the opportunities.
Thank you, Lisa. Yeah, as Lisa mentioned, I'm the program head of the BCIT Occupational Health and Safety Diploma Program. We have two programs. We're, I would say, Western Canada, BC's largest occupational health and safety post-secondary institution. We put about 25 students through our diploma program, but over 300 at any given time in our certificate program, which is a part-time flexible learning program. And so, the role for myself, it's really my own background is actually in food manufacturing, coming from a regulatory perspective. And now in my role as a program head and faculty, it's really about preparing this next generation of health and safety professionals to be ready to get out there and help a variety of industries, including manufacturing. It's Alan says he's noticed a lot more people with post-secondary credentials. We've seen that shift in our program as well too. I mean, years ago, there would be a lot of people coming from a trades background or other backgrounds into our program, but now it's a predominantly bachelor students who are coming in through the program for a second education to launch a career. We still get the trade students, and we get international students too. Not many. We only have a couple seats in our diploma program, but generally masters, PhD students, medical doctors who are coming to reskill to take their previous experiences and use those for a career in Canada, which our program is well suited to provide. On other programs, unfortunately, they have to reboot, but for ours, they take it and they dovetail quite nicely into an OHS career. For future skills, we really try to align our curriculum with what industry needs. So we do engage regularly with industry through our program advisory committee and our regular assessments of our program. And so, we really emphasize for our graduates that they keep up to date with what the current changes in technology are. And we know how rapidly technology is changing. I would say, March 2020, I would say the pandemic, but really the advent of AI has been kind of a bit of a watershed moment in how quickly technology is changing and its implications for a variety of industry sectors. The challenges we have with this are really how do we address current training gaps? Post-secondary institutions are actually not that nimble. We provide good core education, but really working hand in hand with the industry associations to try to bring in what is actually happening in the current context is what is a bit of a challenge. So ensuring that our students are well suited to keep pace with technological advancements is a real challenge, I would say. Opportunities, well, there's the opportunity to foster collaboration. I know the Manufacturing Safety Alliance has been really good at fostering collaboration with post-secondary, and work to develop industry service courses and programs that help not just OHS professionals, but those workers in industry get their job done in a way that protects the health and safety of them and their peers. So yeah, I think you're really bridging the gap between education and industry is what we need to do, is what we should be looking at from our role at BCIT.
Thank you, Bobby. What an insightful and inspirational opening. I absolutely agree. We need to work together. It's all about how do we do that successfully, knowing the challenges that we face, but also the opportunities that will help us overcome those challenges. So thank you. And Craig, looking forward to your introduction as well about, you lead an organization that in industry on the front lines. So really sharing your perspective on the future skills needed, the challenges that we face, and of course, the opportunities.
Yeah, good morning, Lisa, and thanks again for having me as a panelist. My name is Craig Ogilvie. I'm the Vice President of Supply Chain for BC TruFoods. I've worked in Canada for over 12 years now, for various companies. Obviously driven a lot of operational change. I would say one of the in terms of future skill needs, there is a huge shift towards automation, away from your standard manual processes that's been there in the past. I would say that our skills needs just now is more on not necessarily engaging university students per se, but also trying to engage your non-college educated people or university educated people, and how we can enhance that skill gap. Working with our OEMs, which are equipment manufacturing suppliers, to really kind of look at that training strategy, which I'll go in a bit more detail later. The challenges, I think, just now is technology for technology's sake. It's not a case of just jumping on the bandwagon, because it has to be the right fit for the organization to make sure it works. I would say the other challenge is obviously legislative. We are working, I would say we're leading edge from BC TruFoods perspective. We've introduced a lot of robotics, a lot of safety protocols from Europe, for example, which is different to what Canada's used to. So what it says just now under WorkSafe is a little bit different. So again, working with WorkSafe and develop the future is critical. Challenges on language barrier. Canada is very multicultural. English is not everyone's first language. So someone like myself, English isn't my first language either, but it's really a challenge trying to kind of make sure that everyone gets the same content. So we know that's a challenge. I would also say the age demographic, like Bobby mentioned, is definitely a huge challenge. The younger generation can pick up an iPad and do a whole bunch of stuff on the iPad, where the older generation, not as much. So again, there's the benefits of kids today growing up with technology. It's a little bit easier to train said technology compared to the older generation. And then again, just want to echo what Bobby said, the opportunities to network. So just because the sectors or the organizations are in different industries doesn't mean we can't share best practices across the board to make sure that we're all learning together as we navigate this massive change that's happening in our organizations today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Craig. You've listed a number of key parameters. I mean, how do we bridge those skills from the older to the younger generation? How do we ensure that those risks for the new equipment coming into organizations like robotics are controlled successfully without, having legislation kind of upfront from that, and making sure that those pieces are connected to the educational curriculum for upcoming health and safety practitioners. So it's a lot, right? It's a lot happening and really landing on everyone's plate. So a perfect opportunity to move into the next theme of this is really understanding the landscape. So looking at the trends, I mean, what current trends are driving the need for upskilling in the manufacturing sector? And what are the potential consequences of not addressing it? You know, moving maybe to you, Alan, on that question to launch the conversation into that next piece. Oh, I don't think we can hear you with you're on mute.
Oh, I'm still doing this 4 years into this. Thank you, Lisa. Yes, I'm happy to start the conversation. That we did hear, some of the, in the opening statements, some of the discussion about the trends that are taking place in manufacturing, but I can kind of formalize it by talking about some of the really, I'm going to talk about 5 key trends that are taking place in manufacturing that are driving this need for higher skilled or more highly skilled workers. So one is obviously just technological advancements. I don't want to get too jargony here, but in manufacturing, we call it Industry 4.0 technologies, or all these advanced and emerging technologies that are being integrated into the manufacturing processes, like automation, robotics, the industrial Internet of Things. These are all reshaping processes. So these really demand a workforce skilled in operating and maintaining those machinery. Digital transformation, which is part of the same transformation. This involves such technology as the adoption of digital twins, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, which has already been mentioned. It's something that's taking a bigger part of my job these days, quite remarkably. But all these technological, digital advancements also necessitate upskilling workers to handle this new software, to interpret data, to optimize production processes. Number 3 is the sustainability and the move towards net zero. These environmental regulations are becoming more strict. Consumers are demanding sustainable products. So manufacturers are increasingly focusing on clean manufacturing practices. Again, this requires a high-skilled workforce that's knowledgeable about things such as energy efficiency, waste reduction, and sustainable materials management. There's the global supply chain dynamics. We remember all the supply chain disruptions we encountered during the pandemic. So this also highlights the need for experienced and highly skilled workforce to adapt to these changing supply chain strategies. So that'll be critical going forward. And the 5th is the workforce demographics, which the aging workforce is reshaping the manufacturing sector. There's going to be really a big need for these workers to transfer their knowledge to younger workers. So that's something else that's currently taking place and will continue to do so. And there are many consequences if we don't upskill our workers in a timely and critical fashion. There's consequences for firms. There's also consequences for the Canadian economy. Manufacturing sector and the Canadian economy as a whole. We've heard all about the stories about how we're facing a productivity crisis. Our living standards are stagnating, even falling a bit. All these things speak to the need to increase the skills of the workforce and to encourage companies to invest more in technology. All these things go together. So it's a very, very important topic. So one consequence is reduced competitiveness. If you don't have a skilled workforce, BC manufacturers will be unable to keep up with global competitors, and this will cause huge challenges for the economy. It can lead to operational inefficiencies. So a lack of upskilling can lead to higher error rates, increased downtime, and inefficiencies in production. There's innovation stagnation, something that's affecting the economy these days. So innovation is a big critical factor in staying competitive. But if you don't have the right kind of skilled workforce, it may hinder the adoption of these innovative practices and technologies. And another one I should mention, which obviously is an important issue on this call, is just it introduces an inadequately skilled workforce introduces safety risks into the equation. That's something we all want to avoid. So all these things are important things to think about when we're talking about the need to upskill the workforce.
Alan, do you have any thoughts about where either BC sits across Canada in terms of competitiveness in this area to address and to support the upskilling through programs versus Canada to other parts of the world? Do you have any comparatives to share with us here?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think one advantage I'll bring up right now is there is the BC Employer Training Grant, something that can help companies invest in training and upskilling their workers. It's something that we would like to see replicated across the country. So I think in that sense, there's a one advantage for the province. But overall, I think this whole concept of this what I mentioned earlier about manufacturing being a bit of a laggard in terms of investing in machinery, equipment, and technology. Also, the big challenge in manufacturing of the labor and skill shortages is this is a common feature of the industry right across the country in every province.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
Mm-hmm.
To the front lines on a question as we move forward. Craig, what challenges do employers face in ensuring that health and safety coordinators or managers you hire have the right skills and qualifications to advise them effectively? You mentioned this about robotics, and you've been involved in an initiative that our organization has partnered with various stakeholders, including, of course, the post-secondary ministry and future skills, to be able to help work towards a standardized health and safety practice, competency and capability solution. Can you share your thoughts around this?
Yeah, I would say the one of the biggest challenge that I've even found myself with coming to Canada is a lot of the qualifications are not transferable or they're not recognizable. So you have, and I've also heard inter-province. So the province-wide, you may get somebody that's educated in Ontario but doesn't qualify in BC, as an example. So that's definitely a challenge. I think one of the biggest challenge organizations face just now is the experience level. You know what I mean? So someone coming out of school, yeah, they're educated, but when it comes to the reality of being on the floor and in a production setting, what it looks like on paper versus reality is completely different. The end of it, I think, from a generational, again, I'll use the example I've had before, where when I grew up in the UK, when I crossed the road, I looked left, right, and left again. Where in Canada, you just cross the road, right? So the generation's been, I would say, conditioned to, we want to protect them. So our play parks are designed where if they fall off the play park, they're not going to break their arm as much as when we used to climb trees. So the experiential side of the knowledge is one of the biggest challenges that we have as organizations, and really getting people to understand what a risk is.
So in terms of just understanding the risk, as opposed to engineering all the controls, is that kind of what I'm hearing from you?
Yeah, and because even as we implement robotics, there's different elements. So, for example, we have sensors that stop machines. So rather than it being like an e-stop or that, it's really adopting the kind of best in class coming from Europe and even Ontario. Our robotics came from Ontario. So the legislation in Ontario is different to what it is in BC. So that's why, again, getting our health and safety practitioners to recognize what that legislation is there, and then having the discussion with WorkSafe BC in terms of, okay, this is what WorkSafe BC says, but come on site, come and have a look at what you're seeing and really help us develop what the true risk is.
So harmonization is something that you're suggesting is a strong, and we've heard this before from other organizations, the importance of harmonization on standards around regulatory practice, and obviously so that you come up with effective controls that you can adapt and utilize across your organizations outside of one province.
Yeah.
No, excellent. Moving to you, Bobby, with the changing technology landscape, what are the potential health and safety impacts for workers, and how can you, or how can BCIT support upskilling and mitigate those risks within the practice or practitioners that are qualified?
Well, it's hard to talk about the changing landscape of technology without, really, again, visiting AI, right? It's this, we're seeing a drastic change in what's coming, not to be too much of a futurist, but human aspect robots that were, not really thought of are showing up. You're already seeing them in facilities. They're already working, right? And as our ability to implement AI and mesh it with our hardware gets better, they're going to be more dexterous. They're going to have more capabilities. So that's one big thing that's going to show up, particularly in places like warehousing, where they're going to be working next to people. Knowledge parsing is big for, that I run into. And what I mean by that is when people need to generate content, are they just pulling it off a ChatGPT or a Gemini and just handing it in, and that's their resource? It's not just assignments, it's also content for within your organization. So to be able to pull that information and then as a content matter expert to say, I'm going to use this as a tool, not a crutch, is really important. And teaching our workers and our graduates that, hey, understand the difference between, these are tools. They're not crutches to get your job done, right? You see visual recognition is getting, a lot, very, very good. It's we see it in pattern recognition of the faces, but we can apply that in countless places, right? For just watching work sites to see if people are wearing their hard hats as a simple aspect, but as it gets more complicated, even movements and actions and where the body is, or looking at quality of products is going to get even better than it is now. So, integrating these new technologies is going to pose health and safety risks, right? There's a huge amount of psychosocial risks that are going to come into that, right? Expecting people, the pressure of them adapting to new technology that's so rapidly changing is going to put pressure on people, and different people are going to react to that differently. As well as we are going to have strife between machines and humans, right? We've already had that happen with automation and robotics, but now you have a machine that looks kind of like a person working. So there's going to be pressures from call it a union perspective or worker perspective that we are going to have to navigate. So how can, although I've been a bit focused on the AI technology and its implication, but how can we help, whether it's a post-secondary or industry associations? It's about programs that show that these technologies are not a threat to jobs. They are a changing of what the job is, right? That these routine and mundane tasks disappear and people can move into a higher career tier of skilled labor that what may not have been available before. Right. So, and some of these technologies, I remember years ago, we wanted to implement, training, simulated training, but the technology wasn't there. It was the cost benefit wasn't there. But we're now in a place where we can train people in risk-free settings using virtual reality, right, to simulate. So that's really coming into the fore now. You're seeing a lot of small businesses, startups who have solutions, and they're looking for problems in industry because they're trying to generate a business revenue, right? So how do we bridge those companies with a product they have and still implement it in industry? Who's providing the education and training, right? So again, the role, whether it's us or industry associations, need to look at who are these other businesses that are looking to complement and provide, technology solutions to manufacturers, right? So this ongoing education, bridging that is important, but coming back to what, Craig and Alan have already talked about, as Canada's demographic is multicultural, right? So you're getting people, we have a huge amount of new immigrants entering Canada coming from a very different backgrounds, each of them. And how are we building knowledge programs? And I'll talk about it later, that they can use, right? Whether it's a language, whether it's culturally appropriate, how are we bringing them together, right? So those are the challenges we need to mitigate, creating environments where the Canadian demographic can integrate with technology in a way that is productive and not combative.
That's a number of insightful comments there, Bobby, especially looking at, AI and digital technology as a tool to support, workers, to support our practitioners and evolving professionals, because knowing about what it can and can't do is critical to the success of those individuals trusting that technology, right? It is about working together. I mean, everyone has to look at where we are with digital technology and know how it fits in, so that ultimately we can move forward together. And when we look at health and safety specifically, because ultimately we want to make sure that the risks that are on the front lines are controlled successfully, right? Whatever they are, whether they're new and evolving, or whether they're traditional risks that we have with our equipment. Ultimately, we want to help everyone understand their role in supporting the success of making sure that they are safe when they do operate it. Excellent. Moving into the specific question to you, Craig, about the automation, because I know you talked to, there was a big change into your organization that was done not that long ago. What new skills are in demand as we automate more repetitive or potentially unsafe jobs?
Yeah, I would kind of continue what Bobby's saying, in the sense that a lot of organizations are going down the automation route simply because of lack of labor. So your typical ROI is a little bit higher than normal. So we've had to invest in technology simply because we couldn't get the labor to do the jobs we needed. As a result, it's actually had a positive impact on the health and safety side. So we've had a reduction in injuries, for example, simply because rather than having someone manually lifting 40-pound boxes and palletizing them, we now have a robot doing it. That one robot can do the job of two people. Now, a lot of feedback we get from a skills basis is, well, you're taking someone's job away, right? Which is a huge challenge, because when we're trying to introduce technology, we're getting a lot of pushback from unions, from employees on the site, because the theory is we're taking away people's jobs, but in reality we're not. We're basically trying to subsidize the fact we can't get people in the door. So we've increased wages, we've done a whole bunch of other things to try and attract employees, but there just simply isn't enough people out there to be able to do the job. That, in addition to the aging demographic, the robotics help, because we're not asking somebody that's a little bit older to lift a 40-pound box, because the robot's now doing it. So in terms of new skills, like I mentioned previously, one of the biggest challenges we've had is really trying to get our operators to learn the new equipment, right? And one of the biggest things we've done is really work with the suppliers and have them come in and really do a detailed training program, to the point that we don't let them away until we've actually got a lot of people signed off. We use train-the-trainer programs. We're trying to select our higher performing operators, which can talk to the other operators in their language to make sure the knowledge is transferable. We do a lot of documentation. What Alan mentioned previously with enhancing digital uses, so we're using iPads and various other things to try and, again, just connect with the next generation to allow us to really kind of enhance the skill set and the knowledge transfer and various other things. In terms of unsafe jobs, I would say that as we've embraced technology, we're continually learning. So there's times where we've caught maintenance guys and operators do things that were unsafe, but they didn't, without that knowledge base being there, we've had to then re-educate and then re-implement protocols to make sure that people don't put themselves in a harm's way. So again, just embracing that new technology, it definitely has brought around new challenges, good challenges, but also I would say continual learning is critical to make sure that you're constantly revisiting what's safe and what's not safe.
Yeah, it certainly is a continuous journey, but it's excellent to hear that, the automation is reducing the number of higher risk jobs, especially, those jobs associated with labor. I think it's nice to see that those risks are being removed, but again, introducing new types of risks that we have to make sure we mitigate and control with our workforce. So knowing that there's less workers entering than leaving the workforce right now. We want to make sure that we utilize and apply the skills that are needed for today and into the future with our workforce, right, successfully. Moving into now talking about solutions, and we have had conversations of designing solutions. Bobby, coming back to you, how are health and safety professionals adapting to the evolving skill requirements in the manufacturing sector, and what additional support do they need?
Well, it's good that within our industry there is a robust framework for workshops, certifications. I know the Manufacturing Safety Alliance has done quite a good job in supporting people in the industry through the various sessions they put on. So I think understanding how to do comprehensive risk assessments for new technology is really important. Working with manufacturers, as Craig said. Manufacturers put out great products, and sometimes that OHS professional needs to be there to do knowledge translation. They do have the manufacturing equipment, but how do you translate that to the workers, right? And I think one of the biggest, from a support perspective, is to frame it in the type of the learner that you have, right? The nature of the professional. And so, I mean, even OHS professionals, we come from a very wide range of backgrounds, right? So you have the post-secondary graduates who come through programs, right? And they graduate and they work in industry. Well, honestly, they lack a bit of practical experience, right? And they don't have that same career experience to rely on when they end up in industry. And they're I don't want to frame it in I have the book smarts, not the street smarts discussion, but they really need more practical experience when they enter industry, to learn about the various hazards and how to evaluate those hazards and implement controls in the manufacturing industry. So they're competent from an academic perspective, but they need more experience, right? We get the ones from the trades background who have an incredible amount of experience, but many have not been back in school for a while, right? So learning to learn becomes what they need to focus on. So when they enter these industries, short-term courses specifically related to management skills and is really important for that group to understand the business side of how their OHS role integrates with manufacturing. And I think it's been mentioned already. I think maybe Craig and Ellen both mentioned it. Starting with them, recognition of prior learning is important, right? They struggle sometimes they have a great set of previous education. It's just not in a post-secondary route. And, it is a challenge to get that recognized for post-secondary if they want to continue on into, getting their BBA or a master's. Then we have our educated immigrants, right? We have, coming from very strong academic backgrounds and practical experience at times. I mean, the resumes that I see sometimes blow me away, and they're applying for entry-level positions because now they're here at Canada. Canada brought them over because of their education, but their credentialing assessment within various industries is not good. And then you break it up in between the provinces, it's not good, right? So they show up here with all the skill set, but then they can't apply it, right? So, getting their credentials recognized, assessed, providing cultural competency training, working in the Canadian context, and language support, right, are all very important. I would say that in this case, things like ChatGPT help. That allows them to get their thoughts and get them constructed in a way that fits better and helps them grow their language support. And the last one group I want to say is those workers who are in industry and they may start in a labor role and they fall into a JOSH committee. And it's a big feeder, right? Or they fall into a role that, hey, safety is assigned to them, and boom, they realize, wow, I can do a career in this. And they're really coming from a place of, not a trades background, not any background. So helping them, enter into the health and safety industry is a longer journey. And I've seen them in the various Manufacturing Safety Alliance awards. I've seen some of them come through there and met and talked to them, and they do very well because they get passionate about the career that's opened up for them rather than the job they had before, which for me, those are two different things. For some people, they realize, hey, I can make a career out of this. So understanding which type of learner it is really goes a big way in helping them get the skills they need, which gaps they have to succeed in industry.
Thank you, Bobby. And both yourself and Craig mentioned, you know, the importance of working in the industry, just that experience component. The work that we had done in building a competency and capability framework together with educational institutions and other stakeholders through the Sector Labor Market Partnership included the importance of people-centric skills and business acumen, as well as demonstrating those types of skills in the environment before qualification. So it was interesting. We had a lot of conversation on just the importance of that with kind of oversight and mentorship because of the critical role health and safety plays in helping organizations ensuring they're meeting and or exceeding compliance standards. So really all good, interesting points. Thank you all. Moving on to you, Ellen, now on upskilling programs and initiatives. What strategies are you recommending, supporting, or using to upskill existing workers?
Yeah, so again, going back to CME's role as a national advocacy organization, I like to think in terms of how can we best advise governments about what they should be doing to help manufacturers upskill their existing workforce. We did, support the creation of the Canada Job Grant, which is a big program that can help with this. But these types of assistance programs do have their limits because it can be a bit of a roadblock, especially for small firms. Applying for a grant requires a knowledge of the program, takes time to fill out the form, and after all, doing all that work, you're not even sure if you're gonna win the grant or not. So creates this uncertainty. So we have argued that there needs to be a simpler and more long-term government incentive program to help manufacturers with their training costs. So we've been advocating for a tax credit or a worker training tax credit, roughly about 50%, to cover half the cost of training. Now, the reason we make that position, because if you do, it is well known through economic research that companies do have a tendency to underinvest in training. And it's all due to the fact that companies in general are concerned about attrition and poaching after the workers have been trained. So there is a societal, given these broader subtle benefits of workforce upskilling, there is a role for governments to play to help offset these costs in order to help companies invest and to make up for the fact that they are underinvesting. So this is a total win. A tax credit's a total win-win because it would help create more well-paying jobs in manufacturing and help firms again in their quest to adopt technology that requires the skilled workers to operate them. So that's really the main solution we think of when it comes to upskilling existing workforce. Obviously, there's a lot more that can be done about bringing new workers into the industry, but this is something that's a really quick solution to help the workforce that's already here. The only thing I mentioned, there are CME does run some programs, the BC branch, especially lean training, yellow belt and green belt training. These are programs with the support of the government that can also, help drive, more skilled, not just the workforce, but also the management side of things too.
Ellen, would you say that the manufacturing sector has a greater need? There's more upskilling happening in manufacturing than other sectors. Do you have any?
I don't. It's probably. I mean, I think there are certain industries that require much higher skills. Specific industries, manufacturing, I would put in that category of yes, they are an industry that's transforming really rapidly, and would need higher skilled workers. There are another industry you could flag would be construction. There's a pretty desperate need for trade workers there. In fact, manufacturing, we're competing for some of the same workers. So that's also something to keep in mind. And there are some professional industries on the service side that also could use some more highly skilled workers. But for sure, manufacturing is a key one in the economy.
Craig, anything to add from that? You mentioned that your supplier of the equipment provides some training specific to that equipment. Is there any other strategy you have or would suggest to be able to support upskilling to existing workers?
Yeah, so going back to my first statement of technology for technology's sake. So one of the things we did extensively is we actually traveled Europe, North America, even across Canada to look at equipment specifically to see would it actually fit our application. So and then as we were doing that, we were actually speaking to the operators and maintenance staff just to see what were their thoughts on it. Because talking to a supplier will tell you exactly what you want to hear. Where actually engaging with the people who are working with it day in, day out is obviously gives you a better reflection on would that equipment be suitable for your organization. So networking, like I've mentioned before, it is definitely critical to make sure that we can be successful in what we purchase and then the deliverables are there. I would also say that one of the things we've been very good at is, I know Alan mentioned lean. Lean has been a key focus area that we've adopted across the organization through a company called Lean Sensei. We did manage to get some of it paid through for grants, but then it was unfortunately stopped thereafter. So knowing what grants are available to organizations is also key. So Alan and his team could potentially help organizations with that. Because unfortunately a lot of it's about timing. And if you miss the timing, you miss the grant opportunity. And if you don't have someone in your organization purely focused on that grant application process, we've missed out on a lot of potential opportunity there. But yeah, go back to what we've worked on, even from Bobby's comment on the Josh committee meeting. So whenever we've implemented new technology, we've had the organization as a whole review the technology. So and not just at the start, also throughout the process to make sure, are we missing anything? So I see myself as quite an educated individual. I can identify risk pretty well, but there's things that I may overlook because I'm not working with the equipment day in, day out. So this is where we bring the operators in, and they may not be educated to the same level as me, but they have a different level of understanding that we may have missed, right? So it's make sure that we really network across the organization as well, using health and safety professionals, using the Josh committee, using the operators to really kind of make sure that we're capturing any potential gaps that we have in the process.
Yeah, no, that's knowledge. I mean, working knowledge and experience, is critical. You don't certainly want to repeat those things you don't want, you learn from, but then you want to share the benefits, right, of that learning on whether it's a specific equipment or a specific process that would help improve. Any comments comparable to the UK, to Canada on the strategies used to upskill workers? I mean, I know you've perhaps been away from the UK for some time, but do you have any comments on that before we move on to the next question?
What I would say from a visual perspective in terms of what we witnessed in Europe a couple of years ago was their safety proofing is a lot more advanced than what it is in Canada. So, for example, the your design of equipment and the ability to be able to get in and clean more effectively, even from a safety perspective, where their guarding is done at a much higher level. One of the piece of equipment we invest in, for example, is that they're actually weight scales in the concrete floor. So when a forklift drives over it, the equipment recognizes it's a forklift, where if I actually broke the beam, my weight isn't the same weight as a forklift, so the equipment stops. So it's really adopting to like not making it idiot, but idiot proof's the wrong word, but really making it as basic as we possibly can to try and minimize any potential situations that may occur, right? So, and again, that's where when I look at the Canadian landscape, they are playing catch up with the rest of the world from what I've witnessed anyway. And we're trying to adopt that, and that's where the work with likes of WorkSafe and other legislative bodies across the provinces allows us to really kind of look at, well, what is a genuine risk, and have we captured what is deemed as a risk previously to what it is now?
Yeah, there's a lot of cross sharing that can happen both not only across the provinces here in Canada and territories, but also especially looking at international processes as well. So thank you for that. Looking back to you, Bobby, and specifically bringing up artificial intelligence, and you mentioned many good comments and really providing insight into the benefits of AI, but also knowing the limitations. So can you talk more about the ways we can leverage AI as a tool, as you mentioned, to bridge that skills gap and give additional examples, but then speak as well to the risks that employers should consider as they're considering and contemplating artificial intelligence solutions?
Yeah, I think when we're looking at how to bridge the skills gap, it's really going to be other companies bringing resources forward to the employers. Companies that provide personalized training programs and where AI can create customized, training that's ensuring that employees are receiving what's relevant and important to them. Virtual reality, augmented reality. I haven't mentioned augmented reality yet, and I think that's gonna. I think if people are familiar with Google Glass and how it failed when it came out, it was ahead of its time. The AI is what we know now wasn't there. We're getting ready there. You see with Apple Vision and overlaying information, and not just information, but having a visual recognition that will overlay what a worker sees and allows him to make decisions quicker with regards to product quality has huge implications, right? But how do we train the workers for that? Well, those AI tools can help with that by identifying workers who need more support or who are successful in certain areas, and how to take into context their learning styles and provide training that's better suited for their learning styles. Knowledge management systems, right? We store a lot of stuff in Excel, right? And that's with AI, we can have memory within our AI for our workers beyond that to know how a certain worker learns or what training is needed for our facility. So, I mean, that's a high level look at what can come down. But I think it's, small businesses will struggle to adopt those. It's the larger businesses who now are moving into a higher focus on efficiency and productivity that will most benefit. I think the risks that I haven't talked about are related to privacy and security, right? So how are we already know how we have to be careful with using these large language models because they remember what we're telling them. So how are we protecting our employees' data privacy? Bias and fairness, right? The AI systems work on the training data you provide them, right? Well, that training data sets can have a bias in them, which is incredibly relevant when we look at the multicultural demographic of Canada. Who's providing the data set? If it's coming from a place that doesn't have that same demographic, you're going to have biases come into play that don't create effective AI solutions for your groups. There's the other side, the over-reliance in technology, right? These AI systems can't be used to replace human judgment yet, right? And probably never, right? So that we need to maintain a balance between the use of the tools and human oversight. Again, using it as a tool, not as okay, the AI said it, so I'm going to do it, right? So employee resistance, we've talked about. Job displacement as a big fear. So transparent communication with employees to address those risks and helping them understand that, as we bring these tools in, working with unions to say we're moving our workers up the tech tree to, better roles, not simply replacing them, right? So that's going to be, those will be difficult conversations for employers to manage with employees and if they're unionized, their unions. The cost, Craig talked about it. You can't find labor, right? So they took on the initial cost of automation, but then, that ROI on that is going to, over a long period of time, maintaining that equipment, you expect it to be better, right? Because it brings in another thing that Craig kind of talked about when he said design. right? Whether it's a safety through design of equipment, so it's the guarding's better and the accessibility is better. When we talk about AI and automation, it is safety through design, right? These are better designed systems that reduce risk. And so the upfront cost is high, but the ROI is better over the long run.
Yeah, lots to consider. And as we can see, there's many AI policies coming into play, to provide and set expectations on the use in organizations. Organizations are considering, obviously the benefits, but also incorporating the educational pieces so that ultimately it has long-term sustainable success, right? So
yeah, Lisa, you mentioned something there with organizations. I think robust policies are important, right? Because I know organizations has no AI, the workers are going to use them, right? So if you say no, you actually introduced a risk, right? Whereas if you put a policy in place and you can get the workers to follow it, you can actually control that risk, right? So, blanket policies on non-use, they're not feasible, but, even in post-secondaries, you see it that, hey, students shouldn't use AI. Well, that doesn't work, right? We have assignments where we integrate AI now because we know this, whether we allow them to or not to, they're going to use it. So better to help them navigate that process in an appropriate way than leave them to make those decisions for themselves and maybe the wrong decision.
Absolutely. Education is a key, and policy sets expectations for everybody, right? Which is important. And then obviously following through on those pieces and making sure they're changed to, accommodate the environment, right? Because technology is changing and AI is changing. So there's a lot to keep up with everything. So, but absolutely, it's a tool, it's an important tool, and just saying that we're not going to use it is just not, I think, going to be a sustainable solution. Craig, coming back to you in looking at, and you talked about perhaps having, the workforce expanded by some new Canadians coming into your workplace. How can we leverage new Canadians to bridge some of the skill gaps we're facing? Are you seeing that as well? I know, obviously, maybe not this year, but is that a strategy that your organization utilizes as well?
Yeah, I would say so. I think, again, we're not only looking at qualifications, but we're also looking at experiences too, right? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be in our sector. It could be across different sectors. I would say the biggest challenge that we've experienced from bringing or utilizing immigration is it's very difficult. I know they opened the floodgates a year ago, but that's now been closed again. So it's very difficult to try and get someone into Canada. So again, I don't have an answer to that because there is a lot of potential professionals that we can engage with and bring them in to cover that skill gap. I would say the other important factors is that the cost of living to come to Canada is expensive, right? Especially in BC. So there is people that are willing to come across, but when you look at the cost of living, they can tend to stay where they are. And from some articles I've read of late, is actually people are starting to leave Canada now because the cost of living is so high. So that's definitely a challenge because that then just exacerbates the skill gap even further. I would also say that like I mentioned previously, that the qualifications between countries is sometimes not recognizable. So you can have a doctor, for example, who's trained in, let's say, India, and the qualifications don't qualify over here. So you have all these skilled people who are working in lower skilled jobs that they could be utilized in areas where the skills are desperately needed. So I think there's an opportunity as a country to really kind of adopt those qualifications worldwide.
Right. And there's more than just the language integration. It's cultural, right? In terms of really understanding, the different and unique cultures that come into the workplace, I think are as important, right, as a language.
Yeah, and I think honestly, Lisa, like working with, obviously coming from the UK, multiculturalism isn't as big as what it is in BC. And you mentioned culture, like simple things like looking people in the eye, right? I see that as a sign of respect, but other cultures it isn't. So how do you adopt your training methodology and all that kind of stuff to make sure you're incorporating all that different cultural sets? So the language is an important factor we've already discussed, but the cultural differences is huge. And being appreciative of what those cultures are so you can adapt accordingly. And I agree with Bobby, like using AI, just because AI says to do it, that's a massive risk because then someone puts the blame on something else. As a human being, we have intelligence ourselves. We have to use that. So you have to have a sense of judgment. Does this make sense to do it or not? Am I going to put myself in a position where I'm going to hurt myself? Well, if you are, don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's all of that, right? At once and making sure you know that. So those people-centric skills are critical to consider throughout, the adoption and development of health and safety and skills training, right? It's critical. Bobby, anything that you have to add, in what we need to keep in mind to help new Canadians integrate safely into our workplace culture? I mean, you've talked about the number of different cultures that come to your program in BCIT. Do you have any thoughts about that question?
Yeah, to expand on what Craig's saying, language support is really important for non-native speakers. It's, English can be a confusing language as it is, or any new language for anybody is. But add into the fact that there's industry-specific language, right? Job-specific language. I'll go talk to somebody in a particular industry and they'll use words that I don't know because it's not my industry, or they'll use a word that means something completely different to me, but within their industry, it's been co-opted to mean something else, right? So you can only imagine how confusing it is for these people that the words aren't even meaning what they're meaning or what they think they are. Because they don't know that. So making sure they understand the jobs, helping them with language support, but also job specific language is actually really important. Visual aids and infographics are important as well too. I mean, you have people who are coming, they're well educated, they're settling in Canada. Well, you know what? They're bringing their family over, and I can tell you, my grandparents, my uncles and aunts that didn't speak English, they worked in the farms, they picked berries, they were out there, they couldn't read. And things like a visual lockout tagout is something that they can understand. Just even putting in their language wouldn't have helped them, right? If they didn't have the ability to read. So understanding who your demographic is and using visual aids if they're not English, as they're not in their first language, and making sure they actually understand. As Craig said, you ask them if they understand. They're from a certain culture, they'll say yes, but they don't because they can't say that they don't understand, right? So those are cultural understanding their cultural perspective is really important as well. I can't say enough about what Craig mentioned of the recognition of international credentials. Canada does not do a good job of it, right? Part of it is, the various organizations, whether it's the medical associations or the engineering colleges, they have a closed door. They don't necessarily make it easy for international trained people to come in. I've known doctors and I've known engineers, and it has been incredibly difficult for them, and they're quite experienced people because of that lack of recognition. So how do you build a pan-Canadian system to not just those professions but others recognize, or if you're going to whether it's nurses or others, not recognize it as is, how are you going to fast track it, right? You need to have an efficient way for them to get their credentials, not linger them on, which I have definitely seen. So I've talked a bit about that diversity and cultural sensitivity. One thing that I found helped within our program was, it was really informal mentorship programs, but there should be formal mentorship programs. I remember a medical doctor who came in who struggled with Canada's cultural, adapting culturally, but he was a doctor. He was very smart, right? And then I had a landscaper who'd come through the program who hadn't done school in 25 years, and he struggled with the academic. Well, pairing them together was so productive because the landscaper helped the foreign doctor acclimatize better to Canadians by explaining those cultural relevancies. And the doctor helped the landscaper academically. He supported him quite a bit and spent a lot of time with him to get him to the academic place that he needed to be in the program. So that's, maybe one specific example, but having partnership and mentorship programs specifically for new immigrants, identifying where they need mentorship and providing them can help, transition them better to, into workplaces. And then regular check-ins. As I said, people will say they understand, they get it, and they don't, right? And, part of it is cultural, part of it's a fear of saying that they don't understand because they think they'll lose their job, as an example, right? So those are some of the ways that I think we can, some of the challenges and the ways we can help new Canadians integrate.
No, absolutely. I mean, working together and validating, the knowledge is going to be a critical, and doing things differently. The traditional approach has got to change, right? We've got to think differently. We're all going in the same direction. We all want people to be, qualified to do the skills that we're asking them to, but we have to think about many things to make sure that happens successfully. Let's move into now the attracting and keeping and retaining skilled people. Alan, how can we attract individuals with the necessary skills to our sector here in the manufacturing, especially considering, as you mentioned, the competition with other industries and the evolving nature of work? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah. For sure, there are things that can be done to bring more people into the sector, or attract at least get people thinking about taking up a career in manufacturing. So some of the things to consider, I had mentioned near the start of this panel that one of the issues affecting manufacturing is just the outdated perception that people have of manufacturing. Like, they consider it to be dirty and a dying industry, but it's something we can change that perception by highlighting advanced technologies and the career opportunities that are available in modern manufacturing, and make sure people understand that the sector is not going anywhere. We could also emphasize that manufacturing can play an integral role in solving some of today's biggest challenges, like climate change, the housing shortage in Canada, even helping to solve some of the issues all around Canada's healthcare woes. So these are things that can, help bring more people in the industry. We can also leverage technology and innovation that this sector uses. If you highlight these tools that are more prevalent in the industry, you can attract these individuals that are tech savvy, maybe even a little bit nerdy, and bring those people to the industry. There's also one of the big things would be to promote manufacturing to youth. When you conduct surveys of young people, they tend to have this outdated view of manufacturing that I just highlighted. They also underestimate the starting earning potential for someone, especially in skilled trades. They also lack exposure to individuals individuals that are in the trades. Mentors are very important for youth when they're thinking about where they want to work. So if we engage with these students in grade school, high school, and in the colleges, that can help attract young talent. We've been talking about Craig and Bob been talking about people with new Canadians, bringing them into the industry. So that's something else that we can do, through DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives to bring a broader range of individuals to the manufacturing sector. One really big source of opportunity is bringing more women into the field. If you look at the overall labor force, about 50% or almost 50% is made up of women. In manufacturing, it's just 29%. So there's room to grow there. Another thing I'd mentioned, and Bobby had mentioned this, about more partnerships and collaboration with educational institutions to align curricula with industry needs that can help solve this problem too.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot. And, certainly the traditional thinking of what manufacturing was is certainly not what it is today. Manufacturing can solve some of the greatest challenges that we're facing, whether it's climate change, as you mentioned, a few of them, and they're at the hub, of the design solution that needs to be, again, manufactured to replicate it for around the world where those problems exist. So great considerations. Adding to that, Bobby, what role do education and training programs play in enticing that new talent to pursue careers in manufacturing? Is there campaigns on the front lines? Do they go into high schools? Do you have any knowledge on that?
Yeah, I know BCIT goes into high schools. We have counselors come to BCIT that learn about the programs to take it back to high schools. I think collaboration, as Alan said, with post-secondary is important. Offering credit-based courses. So, you can have courses, but if you can assign a post-secondary credit to it, that they can then use in a career progression to complete a certificate, a diploma, a BBA eventually. I think that's important to some people. We do see students who start with small courses, and they're over the period of years they want to build them up to something like a bachelor's degree. Especially because eventually, if they want to move into a management position, there's some industries that they don't really care what bachelor's do you have, but it's a checkbox on the HR side, and people get stopped because they don't have that. And so those with the foresight start building it early. Those that didn't go to post-secondary to begin with, and they started a career earlier to get that education. Outreach and engagement, I think, with industry is important. I think, for students across a wide variety of BCIT programs, whether it's OHS or operations management or other programs, having summer opportunities. So employers providing summer opportunities for students to get practical hands-on experience to learn what these jobs are, right? They don't know what they are. They don't know what these careers are at all. Again, and to Alan's point about how good the earning potential is. Was mentioned that it's very expensive to live in certain cities like Vancouver, right? And people don't come here. If they can see how much they can earn, that makes a difference, right? So, BC has the new Pay Transparency Act. I've seen it help people pick jobs because they can see the potential that they can actually build a life, right? With the earning potential. The conferences to gauge potential talent is really good. I know that the MSA's BC has been incredibly generous and for our students to allow them to attend the conferences without cost. And I think that's a great way to engage students to learn about the industries. I've had students who go into certain manufacturing industries as OHS professionals and then they transition to the operations side. Because they've built a career there and they like that opportunity to open up and they enjoy that opportunity. But they would only do that if they could be exposed to it. So, there's 1-year mentorship positions for even graduates to learn about various manufacturing organizations, and then with a plan to take a full-time position is something that, industry associations can consider. So, combinations of on-the-job training with in-class training that, knowledge and training is something that is important. It is a challenge, particularly with this push towards a lot of online learning, which has its pros and cons. I think online learning is good from the knowledge side. It doesn't do enough for the training side. So if you're going to build programs, as we build programs, we should have the practical side as well too, that we can give them the knowledge, then give them a short duration hands-on component to connect them to what they're actually learning and make it concrete. Absolutely. Yeah, I think these are some of the strategies I think that can be given to entice people into manufacturing.
Excellent. No, and it's all about partnership, right? We've talked about this over and over. How do we do more of that? I think that allows for that fluidity of understanding for those on the front lines of considering roles in manufacturing, knowing what it's like, and then understanding and sharing that feedback, right? I mean that is really so that we can all move forward, together in through that partnership. Moving now into long-term solutions, Alan, looking ahead, what long-term strategies should we be considering to ensure a sustainable and skilled workforce in manufacturing? And we've talked a lot about collaboration, but how can we find collaboration support towards this goal? Is there other strategies that is built in to this approach?
Yes, I would. Yeah, I hate to sound like a broken record, but that's one of the long-term strategies for sure is enhancing collaboration and partnerships. We've been talking about that a lot today, but CME is looking for this collaboration to become more formalized. We've been advocating for the creation of what we call regional industry councils. So this would be groups that you would have different. We call them RICs, different RICs in different parts of each province that would bring together all the key stakeholders, so employers, educational institutions, and government, to work through all the issues and challenges that manufacturers face, and then help develop the curricula so that we are bringing in or educating students with the skills that the industry is going to need going forward. In fact, we have a pilot program in Southwestern Ontario. We have developed a RICS there, and it's done some pretty good work so far. But we're trying to get that pilot program spread out to different parts of Ontario, and perhaps even outside in other provinces like BC. Other things we can do, again, it's in terms of education and training programs. I mean, we are doing these things. We are moving in the right direction, but it's always important to emphasize we need to emphasize STEM education, vocational training, something that seems to have fallen out of favor a bit, but it is coming back, thankfully. Another big issue is the immigration system. Almost all of our labor force today comes from foreign-born immigrants or permanent and non-permanent residents. Obviously, it's a huge story these days. It's tied to our housing crisis. So, fortunately, the government is ratcheting down how many people we're bringing every year because we're not building enough homes to accommodate them. But there are changes that can be made to the point system so that we make sure we are bringing in those workers that industry needs. For that matter, we really need to, over the long term, address the housing shortage in Canada. If we're going to be able to bring in these workers, house them, and fill all these labor shortages. I mentioned it already, but we could, do a better job, or the education system could do a better job of connecting youth to manufacturing and skilled trade jobs. This goes through all levels of education that I've already mentioned, including just showcasing how it can be an exciting career, vocational training again, and increased co-op opportunities for high school and post-secondary students too. Those can all bring more workers into the industry. So those are the main things I think about when it comes to long-term solutions.
Yeah, no, there's a lot to think about. You mentioned the housing. I mean, that's critical, right? You can't bring individuals in or new Canadians in without making sure they have a safe place to live and an affordable place to live. So I know every province has struggles in that.
And I know BC's. Yeah. It's been a challenge in BC much longer than other parts of the country. So I know you're aware of that issue, but it's an issue right across the country today.
Absolutely. No, excellent. And Craig, coming back to you on the front lines, how can we balance the demands of production and business growth with the need for ongoing skills, both in operational technology and in safety? And this is looking at more long-term solutions.
Yeah, I agree with all the comments made with regards to trying to attract, especially the younger generation. If I look at BC TrueFoods in particular, a lot of the labour was built on basically family members following in the footsteps of mum and dad, or it could be growers, for example, where the wives come in and work for us on the production line. What I would say is that we have seen quite a lot of success when we've embraced technology, because in order to attract certain people into the organisation, we've had to increase our wage rates way above minimum wage, which is a challenge for a lot of organisations. That at least gets them in the door. The benefit of getting them in the door, as we've added the new technology, the production element becomes exciting now. So rather than just being very mundane, same old, we're actually allowing us to engage the brains better, which is getting a bit more. When we talk about retention of employees, it gets them engaged more, which is helping us as an organizational grow. So I would say it's a combination of a number of things, but the upskilling has actually helped with demands of production and business growth to really make sure we can compete, and we can basically kind of make sure that we're continuing growing as an organization, both individually as a person, but also as an organization. I would say again, I know I've said it before, but we can't just invest for technology's sake. It doesn't work. It has to be compatible with your organization. And again, that really, the networking across is key. You know what I mean? So I know I've said that too, but it's a continual journey. We can't just do it and then stop. It's a continual learning process.
No, and that's exactly right. Education won't stop, especially with technology, as technology continues to shift and change. A question that I'd like to share, with you, came from the audience. Bobby, you started to talk about this. Perhaps both you, Bobby, and Craig can talk and provide some input into this question. What type of education or training can help build or transform existing skills to better translate them for the manufacturing sector? Any thoughts from maybe starting with you, Craig, and then.
Well, if I look at our maintenance team as a prime example, where you have millwrights and electricians, right? So there's electricians a little bit different because they're specialized. But from a millwright perspective, you'll pick up some welding skills, some basic maintenance, or not basic, some good maintenance skills. But as you move into automation, it's a lot more than what they've been educated to, right? So there is an element of, I wouldn't necessarily say fear, but there is an element of the unknown. So again, working with the suppliers to really make sure that education goes across. So it's not like necessarily a course per se, but it's linking with the suppliers of set up automation to allow us to transfer that knowledge base.
Right. I mean, direct knowledge from those who built it, right? I mean, that are most familiar with the technology, which is critical, right? They are the most informed on.
Correct.
Right?
And I also say that a lot of the automations now allows you to remote in, so the supplier can actually come and see their equipment run remotely, and then help troubleshoot any problems that you have. So it's more problem solving / troubleshooting education rather than being the guru of said automation equipment. You don't need to know the robot inside and out, but you could help problem solve. So that's where things like Lean and utilizing the green belt, black belt methodology really helps individuals on how to problem solve properly. What does that methodology look like? And we've had a lot of success at BC TrueFoods by doing that, and working through Lean Sensei to really help that standardized methodology and problem solving.
Right. No, absolutely. Bobby, anything to add to that question?
I think for the broader class of workers, whether they're new or immigrants, there's an important back to basics that needs to be done for them that sometimes is missed. And that's really simply courses on lockout and tagout from, even if they're not going to do it, to understand it, right? Being able to identify confined spaces and know not to get into them. Psychological safety, right? Ergonomics. We've talked a lot about tech and AI, but those basics for new workers and immigrant workers or who don't, are not used to working in these facilities, those are really important, right? We know overexertion is still, and bodily reaction type injuries are still the highest cost of, the most common type of injury in workplaces. So, having that as a base to build upon is really important. And so, just even an introductory occupational, to plug our program per se, it's like the fundamentals course is a good course for workers to have, so they get a baseline understanding of these, right? And then they can go from there, right, to build up to what they need to build up for whatever, whether they're getting into a specific role or whether they're getting into a broad set of roles that they can move across.
Excellent, Bobby. Looking at, mindful of the time, I'd like to invite each of you very briefly to share what key thought you'd like to leave the audience with today. Maybe starting with yourself, Alan.
Yes, thank you. Happy to kick that off. So given I'm an economist, I'll have to end with just to bring back a number I mentioned earlier. The manufacturing sector in BC, has roughly 46,000 workers today that are aged 55 years and over. Most people retire when they're 65. So that means we're looking at a big retirement wave affecting the industry over the next 10 years, a continuation of a trend that started about 10 years ago. So this is like this 20-year period of the baby boomers retiring. So I think it's just to reiterate that, labor and skill shortages are going to be an ongoing challenge for industry at least into early next decade. So this really means we need to, we really need to embrace this collaborative efforts between all the stakeholders. Again, employers, government, educators to make sure that we do our best to put our best foot forward to try to offset these skill shortages.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alan. Bobby.
Yeah, I think we need to understand that, with this aging workforce, that new immigrants are becoming the bedrock of the Canadian labor force. And so we need to gear our education and training with that in mind, right? So, so that's number one. Number two, education and collaboration between post-secondaries, who I said are not nimble, and industry associations that are, to sit down together and work together to build the programs that are needed. With the industry associations doing it quick and us integrating it slowly as the new normal within our programs, and embracing new technology, but as Craig mentioned, understanding the risks that it has to be relevant, it has to fit, and our worker concerns need to be addressed, because the perception itself can be a bigger hazard than what the hazard is if you get into different conversation of Sandman's perception of risk as being both the hazard itself and the perception of what this change is and what it represents. So those are the final thoughts I'd say. Like, let's look at those, how these new workers and how they integrate, how educational institutions can collaborate, and how new technology actually fits.
No, excellent points. I mean, again, we're hearing collaboration again. Together, everyone achieves more. Team, right? I mean, that's really, critical, and us working together to do that, and understanding, the timing it takes for change to happen, and knowing that the digital age is here for the future. We can't ignore that. Craig, your thoughts?
Yeah, just to echo what Bobby just said, is do your due diligence. It's not a one-stop shop technology, so you have to make sure it fits your organization, and then understanding what the new risks that brings is critical. So again, go and do your research. Go and see it in action, right? So that's what we did. We toured Europe, we toured North America, we went across Canada to look at what we had available to us, and did it make sense? I mean, so the ROI is a discussion obviously to have within the organization, but you need to make sure you understand what you're buying and does it tick the boxes.
No, absolutely. And I do want to say we do have a few questions, but those will be definitely answered by contacting each of you, depending on those questions. So I just want to make sure our viewers know that we'll get answers to your questions that we didn't have time to ask today. And really, once again, thank you again to all of our panelists for joining us, and to everyone in the audience. Really appreciate your participation. It was a great conversation, a lot of insight from a very knowledgeable and experienced panel. So thank you all for taking the time today. So closing and moving forward with, if you haven't had a chance, I wanted to talk and move about our new 3D immersive training subsidiary, Safety MetaWorld. We talked about technology. I mean, looking at ways we can use harmonized immersive learning, and I really encourage you to check the website out and take the plunge on looking at how applied learning in a simulated environment really comes to the front lines. So please do take that opportunity. Also, I wanted to talk about our June 6th, 2024 Safety Pinnacle Awards Gala. We can't wait to celebrate the safety achievements and, of course, leadership of more than 30 leading BC businesses with all of you. If you haven't got your tickets, please do so now. They're open. And of course, registration will open in June for Make It Safe Vancouver, and online. Watch makeitsafe.ca for details, and super early bird member savings that is coming very, very, very soon. And then, of course, join us again June 20th for a new webinar on guiding principles for safety management. So lots of things to look forward to. In closing, I'm excited to share these video highlights of working with our member manufacturers and food processors over the past year in 2023. So hopefully you'll take the time to watch.
There there was some pretty close near misses I was involved in that basically sparked that drive for me to speak up when others didn't.
Safety is everyone's job. It doesn't necessarily have to be in your job title. It's part of what you do at work every day.
The flywheel is turning, and we're seeing an incredible engagement from our industry. Companies that we're working with have 26% less injuries.
So the goal here is that through our outreach, through our education, through our training, through our consultative services, that constant reminder that safety is not just something you do when you have enough time or you have enough people. It's really something you do all the time.
Safety is important to me because people are the most valuable asset of any organization.
We've expanded our Make It Safe series. We want to continue to increase our training portfolio so that people can really see the breadth of the talent that we have, because we got a lot of employers we want to reach across this province.
Education is how we change cultures. We have continued to invest in new training programs to help provide more education around health and safety to our industry. We've not only developed health and safety training focused on physical health and safety, but psychological health and safety as well. One of our flagship programs is the Occupational Safety Standard of Excellence. We're a certifying partner for the core program. It is an invaluable program for industry that has demonstrated consistent health and safety performance results. Companies who are OC certified have a 30% lower injury compared to non-OC manufacturing members in British Columbia.
There is a real lack of safety professionals in the workplace. Employers are looking for somebody that they can bring in-house, and when they can't find them, they're looking for alternatives, and they find us here at the Alliance. A lot of independent members come to us now because we're a reliable source of credible safety personnel that can really solve their problems.
We've worked with the Ministry of Post-Secondary Education and Future Skills since 2016 under the Sector Labour Market Partnerships to standardize the health and safety practice for manufacturers here in British Columbia. Our goal now into the future is to ensure that we can successfully qualify and train health and safety practitioners consistently to that standard. Safe 360 is a health and safety management system standard that is harmonized across all provinces and territories, including ISO 45001, which is an international health and safety management system standard.
MSCBC always there on day-to-day basis in helping me as a safety leader to run the toolbox, get updated information about any updated program, first aid program, Bill 41, any new trainings.
The Manufacturing Safety Alliance launched a subsidiary in 2023 called Safety MetaWorld. One of the challenges that we face in training and educating about health and safety is really understanding the consequence. The exciting part about Safety MetaWorld is that you can simulate these challenging circumstances without those devastating consequences.
I've had an overwhelming response from members around how they've really felt that the team just took that weight off their shoulders, gave them confidence that they could take it and do it themselves, but that they always had the support of the Alliance when they needed it the most. And that's really fun to see.
We have to make sure that we are part of the support mechanism for industry to be successful at building stronger, sustainable, thriving organizations. We will deliver that vision of bringing workers home to their families every day, healthy and safe. And of course, visit us online anytime for help or to access our full library of webinars, resources, and training. Watch for an email tomorrow with a link to the recording of today's session and a survey link to share your feedback and topic ideas. Thank you all for attending. Have a safe day.